what's up, y'all? Good to see you. Welcome to the Uplift. We have a great show for you and a great cast of characters, including a bus driver who is so special to the students he played a role in their lives long after their last trip to school. 5 siblings separated by foster care and the man who helped them reunite because he can relate. A pharmacist in Maui working to save lives after the devastating wildfires. Plus a cat who works at an optician's office. And a dog known for riding the Long Island Railroad all by himself. All that and more heartwarming stories. You are watching The Uplift. Hey, what's going on? I'm Nate Burleson, and this is a show that will lift you up for at least the next 30 minutes. We begin with the school bus driver who not only took students to and from school, he made a lasting impression on their lives. Here's Steve Hartman.
This may look like a normal family reunion, but as you'll soon see, Reed Moon of Zelienople, Pennsylvania is no ordinary patriarch.
Good to see you.
And this is no ordinary family.
This is Anna Gale.
Far from it.
Bethany. Here's DJ. Handsome lad, that's Lewis.
How many kids do you have?
I'll say 200.
Maybe even more.
No, they're not biologically my kids. But emotionally, they surely are.
That's how attached he is to the students who rode his school bus. A job he held for 27 years. Even though it wasn't exactly his first choice.
Reed sort of fell into the job. Well, not sort of, he did fall into the job. In 1990, he fell off a roof working as a handyman. After that, he wanted a job closer to the ground. But ironically, he says no job has ever lifted him higher.
It's his children. And being in a position where you can love kids every single day is a lovely position to be in.
Like, he just made everybody feel safe and loved and cared for.
Do anything he possibly could to help somebody. I don't really have a teacher that I remember. I remember my bus driver.
So many kids feel the exact same way, that more than 20 of them had Reed, who is also a pastor, officiate their weddings. A bond so strong that even though Reed retired years ago, former students gathered recently for one last ride.
And they're finding their assigned seat.
Right here in the front.
That they had 20 years ago. And now their child is sitting on their lap. And that kind of feeling is a wonderful thing.
And as for his secret to fostering all this.
So we only had 2 rules on the bus.
Show everyone love and respect.
Love and respect to everybody.
It's a lesson they carry with them.
Love and respect.
And on them.
Got a love and respect tattoo?
I'm convinced that when you love and respect people, most of the time, that's what you're going to get back.
Get back.
Have a good day, Mr. Man.
By the busload.
Thanks, Rosie. Have a great day at school, honey.
That man has a heart as big as a school bus. The wildfires in Maui last month left people without homes, jobs, and in some cases, medication. We now meet a local man dedicated to fixing at least one of those things. Here's Lee Cohen.
When a wildfire rips through your town, you don't just lose your home, job, and basic needs. You also lose access to life-saving health care. That's what Dr. Corey Lahano saw when the devastating fire ravaged Maui's historic town of Lahaina, prompting him to rally his team of pharmacists to help.
Our phones started just lighting up. You know, I had like 43 voicemails. A ton of text messages asking for assistance. It was actually a lot of our patients asking, you know, where are you? Can you assist? So we decided to mobilize and head out.
Lahano is Native Hawaiian and owner of Malleola Pharmacy. He's been working non-stop to distribute thousands of medications to wildfire victims. Some injured from the flames, and others in desperate need of life-saving medications that were lost in the fire.
Those first few days were really chaotic. It was really sad, actually. There was a lot of patients who needed, you know, acute medical treatment, and now making sure that they get all of their chronic maintenance medications. You know, there's a lot of antibiotics that we're still dispensing, skin infection, wound burns, all those different things that you want to get started that same day when diagnosed.
And his team did it mostly for free, waiving all copays and costs for medicine in those first few days.
I would say more than half of our prescriptions going out are just, written off and free of cost to any patient.
Lejano's team is small, less than 24 people, and every single one agreed to sacrifice their normal lives and business to help their community.
People felt guilty, that we are still here. Why are we here and they're not? And that really just galvanized us. They literally saved hundreds of lives over the course of the few weeks because they chose to sacrifice and to give everything that they have. But we're not resting yet.
Maui's recovery is far from over. But even through the destruction and loss, Lejano says there's hope.
Every single day I recite to myself moments of gratitude that in that moment that I was grateful for. That silver lining, there's always something that, aside from the despair and sorrow, there's always good. The symbol of hope is really just the people. They are hopeful and they are resilient and they are just ready to move forward.
And his team is going to continue to do their part to make it happen. In Hawaii, helping your community isn't a chore. It's a part of life.
I was able to sit down with one of my mentors. I asked her, what would you do if you were in this situation? And then she said, what would your kupuna do? Your ancestors do. Ouch, that was quite the dagger. And the only answer I needed, our kupuna would take everything that they had to help stand up and support a space that is in need, that needs to be healed. And so that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Another one of those local heroes helping Maui rebuild. Okay, coming up, what is a cat doing wearing glasses? Find out what that is all about coming up next. Plus, we go to a garden with a rich 80-year history that started during World War II.
Show me the apple. Good job.
In her spare time, Truffles the kitty knows a lot of tricks.
Can you give me a high five for that? Awesome.
But she's got an important day job. She models glasses for kids.
Kids just really related to her right from the very beginning.
At this Pennsylvania eye clinic, kids are excited to copy this rescue cat who loves wearing one of her 25 pairs of glasses.
What are we missing generally with kids and vision?
I feel like the moment a child gets glasses is such an important moment in their life, and it's always been my goal that I create a positive and fun memory.
Fingers crossed.
A quarter of kids like Joella have a vision issue that goes undiagnosed, and it's not always fun for kids who feel different or find doctors scary. That's where Truffles comes in.
Truffles and Joella, they both are different. And they both have a heart to help.
Kids all over the world now look to Truffles.
How does Truffles look?
An online sensation to show them how it's done.
Thank you, Truffles.
But for all her good works, at heart, she's a cat.
She kind of seems like she owns the place.
She definitely must feel like she owns the place.
That cat might have 9 lives, but it has one really important job. All right, now we take you to a garden in Minnesota that has an 80-year history behind it. Here's Susan Elizabeth Littlefield.
Well, you got zinnias over here, which are really beautiful.
At Dowling Community Garden, there's a lot to see and a lot to taste.
Sweet potatoes, of course, tomatoes, husk cherries.
Craig Haverman can identify just about anything in this 20-acre plot. Gardening is in his blood.
What are your first memories of gardening?
I would have to say it would be my grandma Ann at her garden, because it was just lush and it had all the things I like.
He gets to relive his own history in this very historical place.
I get goosebumps thinking about 80 years that this has been here, and hopefully it continues for another 80 years.
The garden started in 1943 as a victory garden. There were about 20 million of them in the U.S. Local gardening was encouraged so that people wouldn't run out of food while so many Americans were away at war.
Well, a lot of people in this area, grew up on farms, and so they jumped at the chance to have these huge chunks of land that they could grow their vegetables on.
And they are still jumping at a chance to be here. The Longfellow neighborhood green space is still thriving. People rent plots, and there are over 250 gardeners tending to the land, including Craig, who lives close by.
The word community. Does this place bring people together?
Oh my goodness, you would not believe it. People love to walk their dogs, that bring their kids over to play. People love to just stroll through the garden, just to look at the beautiful flowers.
It's withstood the threats of redevelopment, pollution, and time.
What is your hope that really comes from this place?
My hope is that, people can find a little solitude, peacefulness. Just sitting there, I feel so peaceful,
Me too.
A beautiful garden is food for the soul. All right, coming up, learn about a dog that had a bank account, a seat on a train, and an acquaintance in President Teddy Roosevelt. Plus, a full circle moment, meet the dad who grew up as a foster child, then became dedicated to reuniting 5 siblings in foster care. If you saw a dog alone on a train, you might try to find its owner, right? Right. But more than a century ago, Roxy, the Long Island Railroad dog, frequently took the train alone and became an icon on the rails. Here's Roman Fieser with more.
Nestled along a busy highway near Long Island's Merrick train station, there sits a subtle grave. So subtle, you could almost miss it. In memory of Roxy, Long Island Railroad dog.
This is a story everybody should know about, and obviously when Roxy lived, everybody did know about Roxy. Supposedly he knew more about the Long Island Railroad than the passengers, and he could make some really great connections from Greenport to Riverhead to Manorville to Eastport out to Sag Harbor. Then he knew to take a different train, go out to Montauk.
Ralph Peters, president of the Long Island Railroad, made Roxy an official mascot. And that's not all. Roxy had a bank account, rights above all passengers and trainmen. He could sit in any seat he wanted, and he had a special collar made.
They gave him a special collar, and he wore the tag, and it said, "I am Roxy, the railroad dog. Whose dog are you?"
He also made some big headlines. We're talking presidential big.
One day wandered into the private cars being used by President Teddy Roosevelt, and he lay down on the bed. A porter came in and wanted to, boot him out. He refused to budge. Teddy Roosevelt came along, and he heard about Roxy and found that he was important too, and the two of them rode to Oyster Bay together.
Roxy spent 15 years as the railroad's mascot until succumbing to edema on March 11, 1914. His death made national headlines, but for more than 100 years, this modest roadside grave was all that was left of his memory. That was until this past spring.
The first thing that struck me about Roxy was how beloved Roxy was.
Sculptor Ronald Lipsky is no stranger to grabbing attention with his art, especially dogs, which is why he was the perfect choice to give a celebrity dog like Roxy his day in the sun.
I thought that Roxy ought to be way up in the air, and I thought about it, about Roxy going on a pillar of some sort. But then I came across a story about Bessica Raich, who was the first female solo airplane pilot in the United States.
Another Long Island native who soared to great heights. So, in a bit of an unconventional choice, Lipsky chose to depict them together, with Bessica lifting Roxy high into the air. A 20-foot, 6-inch statue now stands tall over the Mineola train station, ensuring that Roxy will forever be able to greet his fellow passengers on the Long Island Railroad.
They say every dog has its day. Seems like Roxy had a bunch of them. Coming up, meet 5 siblings, some of them separated in foster care, and the man who helped them reunite. We end with a man who grew up in foster care as a child and is now paying it forward, building his own big family. Here's David Begnaud.
The joy that these brothers and sisters have, just being together, should not be taken for granted in this story. Each one had been put in foster care and separated.
Bubby, make sure you brush your teeth while you're up there.
Robert Carter, now 33 and the owner of a Cincinnati hair salon, became a foster parent to 3 brothers in 2018. And then one day he heard something that was particularly painful for him.
I overhear my oldest son, Robert, talking about their sisters. So I asked him, hey, you got sisters? And he's like, yeah, we have sisters.
What did you think in that moment when they said, yeah, we have sisters, and they had been separated?
I thought they were lying, to be honest, because no one's told me about siblings.
But that obviously hit a chord with you, because you'd been separated from your siblings. Right. Now, the parallels with his own young life and those of these 5 children are striking. Robert Carter was placed in foster care at the age of 13 and not destined to be adopted. So you lived with your mom for the first 13 years?
Yep.
Dad too, or just mom?
Just mom.
What was your mom dealing with? What was she struggling with?
She was a single parent of 9, and she also had alcoholism.
Do you remember not eating some days?
No, because we always say, I was the oldest, so I always made sure we had something to eat. I was going to steal from corner stores, even if it was like chips and stuff for my siblings, because we had to eat in order to survive.
Did you ever turn to drugs?
No.
Alcohol?
No.
What do you think kept you away from that?
Seeing what my mom and dad went through, how it affected them, how it affected us. He's going to pass it around.
It was against that background that he sought help from the foster care agency in Cincinnati, Ohio, to find the boys' missing sisters and reunite a family.
We've been through a lot, and especially me. And it's a lot of pressure being the big sibling because you have to put on a good image. And it's like, it's a lot because they look up to you.
The cool thing about your dad is your dad has also been in foster care. So he knows what you guys have gone through.
It helps a lot because some people don't understand.
But he knew what had to be done. And that is where Magistrate Regina Stargel comes in. Because Robert Carter decided he wanted to adopt all 5 brothers and sisters.
So I'm thinking, you made it out of the foster system. You're starting your own life. You're young. This is your chance to do you. And people are selfish, and I'm expecting him to do you. So why are you taking on the obligation of 5 kids? I'm like, convince me.
You didn't really have a father figure constantly in your life. So where did you learn how to be a good parent?
From not having one. From just, I give them everything I wanted, from the affection to the attention to the stuff we do together. So I just try to do everything I wanted as a child and my dad, I do to them to make sure that they have everything I wanted and more.
In court in 2020, an adorable family in waiting made the newspaper.
His kids came in dressed in finery in red and black is what I recall.
And they faced Judge Stargel's scrutiny.
I'm looking to see body language. How are the kids interacting with each other as well as the petitioners as the testimony's being taken? And I was like, this is the real deal.
The real deal. And under her court order, a family. Now, as Robert Carter watches his children joyfully play together, he also sees what may have happened had the children stayed in the foster care system.
So we're at my old apartment where I was in independent living when I was 16, by myself, coming home every day to nobody to greet me, nobody to cook me meals, no one to wake me up, say good morning or anything.
No one to welcome him home. That's what he remembers most about living in this apartment building while he finished high school. After living in 2 foster care homes, he was sent here to live on his own.
It was hard. It was one of the most depressing times of my life, something I would never want any of my kids to go through or anything like that.
Can you tell me about some of those moments?
I probably said it was my graduation. Because when you imagine graduation, you imagine, the day of, your parents waking you up, and it's your big day. And it was none of that.
He filled his days working 3 jobs.
Stay busy so I wouldn't have to go home alone, basically.
So you work concessions at the Reds, Cincinnati Reds.
Dishwasher at Chipotle.
Dishwasher at Chipotle.
And I was a cashier at Wendy's.
As rough a childhood as you had, how were you able to turn that into such a productive adulthood?
I feel like I just use my trauma and my hurt and stuff to be my fuel to keep going and to want better and want to help people and do better in life.
It's inspiring that given all you've been through, you were able to graduate high school.
Because most foster kids don't.
When he had aged out of the foster care system at age 18, never having been adopted, he started to make sure that other people like him didn't become statistics. So he first got custody of his younger sister. Then at 21, he became the guardian to his 13-year-old brother. And then he started to take in foster children. Is you doing this trying to fill a hole in yourself?
I don't think so, because I told myself, once I start my family, nothing else is going to matter. And literally nothing else matters now that I have my family, because they're together.
Their togetherness extends to everybody pitching in at the salon, which they depend on to support their family.
It's joy in everything, I feel like, when it comes to kids. Because it's a memory. It's stuff I didn't get.
And guess what? That joy has spread. We wanted Judge Stargell to see the family she allowed to be together almost 3 years ago today.
We are reaffirming the adoption of the Carter kids.
Yay! Gotta love that, keeping those kids together. That's our show, and I hope this news, these stories brightened up your day and lifted you up. Remember, keep swinging till you knock it out the park.